Welcome to the EverydayFI podcast. I'm your host, Megan Combs, a personal finance junkie who learned from all of life's money mistakes. Come with me as I explore the incredible stories of those on the path to financial independence. Plus, I'll teach you how to start your own journey. Are you ready? Hello, hello. Let's kick off the first episode of the EverydayFI podcast. I am so excited you're here. Thank you so much for listening. Let's start with what this podcast is going to be about. Recently, in the financial independence community, there have been a lot more in person gatherings than ever before. There was one in Vegas a few weeks ago that I personally attended with Brad Barrett from the Choose FI podcast and Alan and Katie Donegan from Rebel Finance School. There was one before that, even in New York City, with Paula Pant from Afford Anything and also Brad Barrett. In these gatherings, I've heard that people are jonesing to hear more from regular folks on the financial independence journey. People who are just starting or in the boring middle, as we like to say, or who are about to pull the trigger on financial independence, or even those who are on the other side. A lot of the financial independence podcast episodes that we tend to listen to center around people who are the big wigs in the community. So when Paula Pant, for instance, is interviewing people, a lot of times it's not just regular folks, it's people who have made a name for themselves, either in the financial independence community or in other communities. And Brad, actually, from the Choose FI podcast, has brought in interviewing other people on this journey who maybe have not started blogs or businesses that center around financial independence. And I would like to dedicate a full podcast to doing that. I want to hear more about the mom of two who works night shifts at the hospital and wants to work towards financial freedom so she can spend more time with her kids, or the couple who has a dream of stopping their careers so they can go work part-time at REI and travel the country. Basically, the people who don't usually get the microphone. So I figured, why not start a podcast that does just this? Most episodes will be dedicated to hearing the stories of these everyday FI voices, but I also want to have episodes on different money topics so you, the audience, can learn how to live your own FI life. I'm going to dive into my journey since I am one of the people in this community, and you probably don't know a whole lot about me. So, my first foray into the finance world was probably when I got my first job at 18 at Gap Kids, making $6 an hour. I was so psyched because I thought this was so much money. It was, I believe, 2004. So, I mean, I don't know what inflation is from there, but it probably was pretty decent in East Texas. I wish I could tell you, though, that 18-year-old me opened up her first IRA and invested 50% of every paycheck, and it grew to hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time she was in her early 20s. But that's not what happened. I am a spender at heart, and I've always been a spender. I'm sure I probably get it from my parents. But yeah, so what I did is I spent all my money every month to the point that I actually overdrafted my checking account several times. Yeah, I know it's giving me a heart attack just thinking about it now. But to be fair to my young self, I was never taught how to use money properly. So right out of the gate, I made all of the mistakes. And I will say I learned from those mistakes. So I like to give myself a little bit of grace here. Fast forward to when I started college, I'm actually pretty proud of myself. I decided to attend a 2-year college that one of my parents taught at because it was free. So, score one for young Megan. And it wasn't until I got to grad school that things started to fall apart. So after that 2-year college, I went to undergrad. I didn't have a lot of student debt there either. I think it was under 10 grand, and it was mainly just to buy, pay for tuition and buy books. I worked and paid rent. So I was able to keep my student loan debt pretty low at that point. But then I decided to go for my master's degree in art history, which of course is one of the most lucrative fields around. heavy sarcasm. And I got that master's degree in one of the most expensive cities in the world, New York. And this illustrious degree landed me with $65,000 in student loan debt. That, coupled with an average annual salary of $25,000 for 7 years, I ended up in some financial hot water. And in came the credit cards to support the lavish lifestyle that I was living in New York City, going out, drinking, eating at fancy restaurants, buying all of the clothes. I decided to open several credit cards. And you're going to hate this, but one of them was Wells Fargo, another was Ann Taylor, and another one was Bank of America. Basically, all of the worst credit cards you could possibly open. Um, Eventually, I racked up about $5,000 in credit card debt. And I know, again, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you have to imagine that this is 2012, 2013, and I'm in my young 20s making $25,000 a year, paying $1,000 a month in rent. So half my paycheck is going to rent only. So $5,000 to me was quite a lot of money. It wasn't until one day I was cleaning out my teeny tiny New York City closet, because not everybody can be Carrie Bradshaw in that city, that I had an epiphany. As I saw the clothes to donate pile getting larger and larger, I started hearing the ring of a cash register in my head. And all I saw was this huge pile of money on my bed, money that had gone to waste. I mean, a lot of these clothes still had the tags on them. Now, I don't know if this was the moment that I wanted to start getting better with my money, but it's the one that stands out in my head. And it's the one that I'm going to see as my turning point. I know it's not as dramatic as losing a house or a car or whatever. It's just a bunch of clothes on a bed. But for me, that's what did it. So let's recap. At this point in time, I'm in my mid 20s. I made around $25,000 a year. I had 6 figures of student loan debt, thousands in credit card debt, and was living paycheck to paycheck. I had no savings. I didn't even know what investing was. I wasn't just starting from zero, I was starting from the negatives. My first move was to pay off my credit card debt. I wish I could tell you again that I used some fancy method like the snowball or avalanche method, but really, at this point, I'd never heard of either of those. And I just stuffed every last dollar that was extra onto my credit card until it was paid off. And then I cut them all up. I lived on debit cards after that. I wanted to go beyond this, though. I wanted to go beyond just handling my debt and budgeting. So I scoured the internet for resources I could consume. I was lucky enough to find Jean Chatzky's Her Money podcast, and I devoured all of her episodes. To this day, her podcast is one of my favorites. She's not in the financial independence community, but she's a really amazing source for if you're first starting out on getting your personal finances, ready and good to go. I will forever be a loyal fan of hers. So from there, I rebuilt my money life. I learned how to save, I learned how to budget, how to determine if I could afford something. One aspect that proved a little tricky, though, was learning how to invest. Because during this time, I was lucky enough to secure a higher paying job that had an employee sponsored retirement plan. Before this, I was working in restaurants and part time at museums. I had no access to any sort of retirement plan that was, given to me by an employer. And because I was mainly focused on budgeting and saving money, I was not really learning about investing, so I didn't know that IRAs existed. And the problem was that because of this, I had no idea how to invest my money. The company that I started at that actually had a retirement plan, they had a simple IRA, which meant that I could pick whatever investments I wanted, right? It's a self-directed IRA, not like a 401k that usually only gives you, about 50 things that you can choose from. No, I could pick anything that was offered. It was from Charles Schwab, and believe me, they had a lot. And so I had no idea what to invest in, so I decided to turn to Google for help and found articles on how to pick stocks. So I chose 5 large cap companies that had dividends to invest in, and I thought I was killing it. I did this for almost a year and noticed my balance was not only not growing, it was going down. And I thought to myself, what the hell? Then I got to one of her money's episodes on index funds and was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I switched everything over to a total stock market index fund and never looked back. Since then, my portfolio has actually grown to 6 figures and my net worth is now over $200,000. So, score one for total stock market index funds. I, of course, especially love VT Sachs. Who doesn't in this community, right? It's been quite a roller coaster journey for me, and I still have a long way to go, but I'm definitely enjoying the ride. All right, that's it for the first episode of the Everyday Fi podcast. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'm incredibly excited to kick this off with an interview next time. It's going to be a surprise because I have about 6 volunteers and I have to choose who will go first. So stay tuned. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Everyday Fi podcast. If you liked the show, please subscribe in your favorite podcast player and leave a review. I love hearing from you. If you want more, follow me on Instagram at @alatemoney, where I post daily insights on how to reach financial independence. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.